Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the effects of interfering with a natural or organic process of evolution and the consequences that negative consequences that frequently flow from such interventions. Now, there are times when you could say that humans have a natural proclivity to stealing things or murdering people. I'm not sure that's necessarily right, but let's assume it is for the moment. Yeah, some certainly are that way inclined. So laws that say, well, don't go killing people and don't go stealing some other guy's shit. Okay, that's going to create a more harmonious and less fractious society. And you can say, well, that's pretty much a statement of the obvious, but the social engineers that we see today, and we've seen really since the Marxist sort of idea that you can re-engineer society to create a paradise. And since that notion came along, not that it hasn't sort of received, you look at, say, the Jewish kibbutz, you can sort of see signs of it there, but the idea that you can alter natural behavior without having to introduce brutal sanctions that affect the majority, that's sort of a new thing, a relatively new thing, and probably didn't really get discussed seriously until, say, the time of Hegel, and then particularly since the time of, say, Karl Marx's Das Kapital came out, that society could be re-engineered and from a top-down revolutionary aspect, and new behaviours could be forced on the populace, and this would be to the benefit of all, and again would create a paradise. This has proven, in my view at least, has proven to be a complete and total falsehood. It's better to work with, and history has shown us, if anything, shown us that it's better to work with the natural proclivities of humans and their natural needs, wants, and desires, and then to limit the rougher edges of that with laws such as don't commit murder and so on. Now, looking at it from an animal kingdom point of view and looking at it in a shorter time cycle, evolution takes millions of years, and whereas humans have been around in the modern form for less than 100,000 years, the evolution in humans has been astonishing in what's a fairly short timeline in the overall scheme of things. So I just want to talk a little bit about evolution and talk a little bit about this idea that it's possible to interfere with natural evolution and natural behavior and change the situation for the better. Now, I think I mentioned previously that we live in a place that backs onto quite a large forest. It's there's no really through traffic or anything in the forest, such as bushwalkers or things like that, because some of the hills here are very steep and just impractical for bushwalking. So we've got this miles of forest that's really got no humans traipsing or tramping through it. And again, the place backs right onto the forest, so we get to see a vast array of wildlife, such as wallabies, kangaroos, all sorts of birds and parrots, and lizards and snakes, and goodness knows what. So it's a real menagerie out here. Anyway, as I'm often out on the back deck working, and I do a lot of in the business I was sharing, I do a lot of writing and sort of spreadsheet type number crunching and so on. So if the weather permits, I frequently sit out there, and as I might sit back and muse and wonder about some point that I'm trying to work on, I'll see the animals and the birds out there. So it's actually inadvertently brought me closer to nature. So there's a few things sort of I'll mention is that some people moved in down the road. They were staying at a place that their relatives owned. the relatives went overseas for like a 12-month stint of some sort. So they moved in there, and they were really city dwellers, inner city dwellers, and they didn't cope too well, I don't think, with being right on the forest here and in the outskirts of the city. So but she, not so much him. She was a radical left, like a teacher. What the fuck do you expect? Or had been. I'm not sure what she's doing now. I think she's doing it part-time. And, we didn't sort of really get to know them particularly well, exchange pleasantries and that type of thing as we walked by. But she came along at a time when there's a particular bird that was going through its breeding season. Now, this particular bird, they lay the eggs on the ground, and the procreating birds then protect the eggs, because the other birds that haven't procreated will eat the eggs. On top of that, if other birds try and build nests nearby, that attracts more predators, such as the larger goanna type lizards that can be 2-3 meters long and weigh 50 pounds. That sort of thing attracts them to come and eat the eggs. So the other birds that are trying to make nests or aren't part of the thing get chased away, and these bird confrontations can be quite vicious. Sometimes there's serious injury involved. But it's the natural way for this species that have been around for 40 million years. It's a natural way for this species to survive, and they've been quite successful in doing it. They're a bird that really only exists in the eastern seaboard of Australia in the forests. So not even the entire eastern seaboard, sort of maybe 1,000-kilometre stretch, that sort of thing. So anyway, this woman decides that she's got this thing in her head about bullying. So in her cognizance, she sees these birds chasing other birds. That bird is a bully. That bird is a straight white male bullying other people. That bird is a fucking Nazi. And she's fighting Nazis, of course, with climate change and all sorts of things. Straight white male oppressors, racism, and she's one of these people. So she never stops carrying on about it. But so she's that bird that is doing naturally, that has occurred over millions of years of evolution and is a successful part of their evolutionary process. She's decided, no, that bird is a Nazi. And she personally, now imagine the sort of anal fucking problem she's got with the Jesus. So she sort of sits outside, the whole day, or whenever she's around, sits outside, and as soon as the bird that defends the nest and stops the eggs from being eaten by other birds or other predators, she runs around and chases that bird off and throws things at it and directly intervenes to now, as it turned out, because she was doing that, the other birds did attack the nest and eat the eggs, and the predators, even the smaller lizards that this bird could easily have chased off, those lizards got in and ate the eggs. So in the end, the nest that wasn't near where this woman could see it, the nest was just torn to pieces and all the eggs were eaten. And so not a single, and there's like 100+ eggs, not a single bird of that breed of bird, not a single bird is hatched, and they're all dead before they even get started. So I thought I'd say something now, but to her, she was stopping the Nazis. That bird has to learn that it's a Nazi. It's a Nazi. It's a fucking Nazi. That she's nicknamed the bird Hitler. Seriously. So she's still doing good things, but don't you understand that now all those birds that would have been, or some, maybe not all of them, but all those birds that would have been born and added to, but they're now all dead. They're gone. They're eaten. They didn't even make it out of the starting gate here. So the effect of what you've done is genocidal, don't you think? But okay, all right, maybe it is genocidal, but that doesn't matter because she stopped Hitler. She has stopped Hitler. That is the one that she is creating the paradise. If some eggs are broken in the metaphorical sense, some eggs are broken, or the literal sense here, then she's still done something good. She's not prepared to accept that her interceding has caused something bad. So the collateral damage of what she's done, this intervening in something she doesn't know anything about, the collateral damage, hey, that's a price worth paying because I stopped Hitler, she says. Now that's the insanity. Now you can say the woman is unbalanced. This woman is, by the way. Say unbalanced. She's just her head is just one fog and miasma of leftist social engineering. The world's going to end from climate change. Nazis are everywhere. She has to stop the Nazis and so on. So, but that's the effect. Now that's quite tragic. Now there are various laws about interfering with the procreation of this particular bird. I looked it up, and I've advised, don't do it unless if you can get an order from the Parks and Wildlife Department, if you can get a court order, do any of that to legitimise what you're doing. That's one thing, but just as a to arbitrarily go out as some sort of a vigilante. Because you think you're stopping a bird that you think might be Hitler because of the gender studies course you did, then that's not good enough reason. But to her, the collateral damage is relevant. Again, I'm stopping Hitler. I'm allowed to do whatever I want. So now coming to it, sort of on the same general or overall subject, the balance of evolution is quite, well, it's finely balanced. What can I say? That animals and creatures that evolved in unison over millions of years have developed, strategies and tactics and methods of survival and having, success. The ones that weren't able to adapt within the timeline that those around them were, don't exist anymore, or they're only found in small pockets. But it's a bit of a competitive thing out there. Now there's a parrot that's local. I've mentioned this previously, actually. There's a parrot that's local to this part of Australia. It's not widespread around Australia. It's local to this part of Australia, and it's got a very specialised beak. Now, the food that it eats is therefore, because it's got quite a specialised beak, because of the food it eats, it needs quite a large territory because the food isn't widespread. So it needs a good sort of square mile. I don't know exactly what the thing is, but a good square mile of territory to have enough food to support a breeding pair. Now, when other birds from the same breed come into that territory, it can get quite violent, and they can get quite brutal with one another because, again, the territory has to be large. They've got a specialised beak. They can't eat anything else. Now, this bird's been around again, similar to the other one, probably, close to 40 million years, according to my research at least. But they're now facing competitors who've been around for less than 20 million years. So a more advanced model, if you like. Now, a couple of things that have happened, some of it due to human intervention, some not. There was a recent sort of drought in Australia. So a particular type of parrot that used to exist in the more arid regions has now come into the subtropical rainforest region due to this drought. So they've moved into the area. Now they've got a wider range of food they can eat. Their beak is not as specialised, but they still eat some of the stuff that the specialised beak parrot. So they're now to somewhat degree. They're now competitors with that parrot. And they go around in mobs, and they're able to scare off the other parrots that are quite solitary. And now I've sort of watched it. The parrots that are scaring them are smaller, but the parrots that haven't grown up with these guys sort of just don't know what to do. They just look sort of in bewilderment and shock. Sort of, who are you? What do I do about you? So they can have a violent sort of fight with one of their own breed. A moment before, but as soon as this other smaller, frail parrot turns up, this bigger parrot, the specialized beak, just doesn't know what to do, and it just tamely gives way and allows the other parrot to eat its food because it just doesn't know what to do. They didn't evolve together. And it won't attack the other bird or do anything because that's not how it's evolved. It hasn't evolved with that sort of competition, so it just doesn't know what to do. The only competitor it ever had was another one of its own breed. So again, it just sort of stands there quite bewildered, not knowing what to do. Now, at the same time as it got that competition, there was a number of plantations that got planted along the because of logging, a number of plantations. The tree that grows the quickest is a certain type of tree that a certain parrot that used to only exist in the northern rainforests, a certain parrot eats or gets food from and uses for nesting and so on. So as they started to put these plantations in, it moved these rainforest parrots now into the subtropical area, and they're doing quite well. And again, they don't have a specialized beak, so they can eat a wide range of foods, but also seeds, including the ones that the special. So that parrot now these other parrots move in mobs of 5 or 6 at a time, so they easily hustle the specialized beak parrot away from its food. And so now this particular parrot is under threat, but you don't sort of see it talked about. Because the threat to the parrot isn't human-based or doesn't come directly from humans, at least. You could indirectly claim, well, maybe it's climate change or something, but the way the activists look at it, and I've brought it to the attention of the activists, saying, look, this parrot is actually under threat, and explained my reasons and my observations over the last few years. And well, if it's not, if the parrot isn't being endangered by humans and by directly what humans do, if it isn't endangered by Hitler, we don't want to know. There's no headline in it. Yet sort of prudent and sensible management of the habitat this parrot is in, that should be a priority. Whether the parrot's being endangered by Hitler or something, I mean, who cares? It's being fucking endangered. That's the issue. But it's not to the activists, which is the point I'm sort of leading up to here. They really don't care. Unless they can pin it on humans, and particularly on Hitler or something, then they're not interested. And the parrot can die out because it has no propaganda value, or not ones they're prepared to use. It has no propaganda value for them. So coming back to the evolution here, that this parrot that for millions of years it's existed successfully in this part of Australia anyway, and it's developed strategies to exist within that environment. It's now facing significant threats, and by more advanced species with wider dietary capability and better technology beaks, if you like, and better organisation of how to move around in mobs and groups that this other parrot doesn't have. It's quite solitary by comparison. I would speculate within 50 years this parrot could be facing extinction, and that would be disappointing given the I think corrective action could be taken, but it's suffering assault, or its existence is being threatened to some extent from natural causes, but also through introduced causes. For example, the trees that produce the seeds they eat, those could be propagated maybe more actively to help them, and there are other things. Or should it be left alone? At what point do we say this is natural evolution or not, and to what extent does intervention make a difference? Now, looking at sort of this idea of Marxist paradise can be created through applying socialist principles. It's never worked yet. You could say it had come close for brief moments in certain instances, particularly where you're starting from sort of ground zero and building up. There are no houses to be in existence, and you're starting to build houses. So whatever you build is better than nothing, and that type of thing. That can say, well, gee, look at the progress they're making. But outside of that, there's no real progress that I can see and have ever seen in socialist societies. Now, the idea you can change human behaviour by killing off people that don't agree with you, then that doesn't seem to be a particularly helpful way of changing the nature of people's attitudes and behaviour to one another. But having a look at the animal thing, or in this case, birds and parrots, I thought that it brought home the extent to which intervention can often have negative consequences, and to work with the natural organic development of people or any species, and try and work with that without applying an ideological framework. That seems to be the ideology is what, because the ideology deviates from natural progression, and that's where it's guaranteed and doomed to fail. You've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.